Happy New Year. Happy 2016. And so let's get honest real quick. How many of you guys have set New Year's resolutions? How many of you have broken any of them already? It's been 3 days. It's plenty of time to mess up, right? It's good. Or how many of you guys are more like the shoot low and you don't have anything to miss types? I'll leave that stuff for people who want to accomplish things. Well, yeah, hopefully, it's the new year, and this is the season to think about this stuff. So hopefully, at one point or another, you've thought a little bit about 2016 and hopefully what you want to do a little bit differently here and there. Because like I said, this is the season, right? If there's a season to start something new, it's always the new year. It's a season of self-improvement, as it were, because everyone wants to make a better version of themselves. And this is why usually in January, it's the churches that have the highest attendance around this time of year, and then it kind of wanes off in the coming months. And vitamins shops and health food stores, January is a really big month for them because everyone goes, I'm going to eat healthy this year, and then the sales drop off. And then, of course, gyms. Gyms are the really big one. If you go to any gym in January, I work at a gym, so I know it's swarming already. And then in February and in March and April, it's less and less and less. But that's just what we do. And it's not a bad thing per se. I'm not calling this out or anything like that. I think it's a good thing to take really any opportunity we can to stop and I guess look at our lives and reevaluate, as it were, to stop and think about what we're eating or about what we're not eating, or about what we should be doing and what we aren't doing, or about getting out of debt, or whatever it is. All that, it's good stuff. I think it's good. But I think what's funny, and I think this is definitely a reflection of the culture that we live in. I think what's funny is that basically this whole month of January, the question that we end up focusing on is, what can I do about me? And how can I make myself a better person? It's it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's how do I get slimmer? How do I get more fit? How do I get out of debt? And all that stuff is good, right? But this morning, for those of us who are here, and for the next few weeks, I want to focus our attention on a bigger question. I want to focus our attention for a little bit on a better and broader question. And it's actually a question that, as we lay this down, it might actually be a little bit threatening to some of you. And some of you might be a little bit disturbed by the question we're going to ask this morning. And that's fine. I want to let you know right ahead of time here. That's fine if you're a little bit shaken up by this question, because we're going to spend 3 weeks talking about this instead of one. This is part 1 of a New Year's series called Resolution. And so this question might disturb you a little bit, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. And in fact, for those of you guys who are in small groups here in the church, I'd really love it if you were for the next couple weeks, take this question and discuss it in your small groups. So lay aside whatever else you're talking about for just a couple weeks and focus in on this question, and then we can go back to our normal lives. But to introduce this thing, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do. We don't normally do too often around here. I'm actually going to take an entire chapter of the Bible, a whole chapter of the Bible, and I'm going to read all the way through it. And this particular chapter is, it's somewhat unique. This particular account is somewhat unique in the Bible, and it stands out a little bit. It's in the book of Nehemiah. You guys heard of the book of Nehemiah? Nehemiah was an actual Jewish person. He was an actual Jewish person who did a really incredible thing. And the Jewish people so valued this incredible thing that he did that the account of it became a part of their Jewish scriptures. And that's why we have it today. This is an account about this incredible leader named Nehemiah who did this incredible thing. And the reason this particular story stands out so much in the Bible, especially if you're not really like a Bible person, or if you're not really into the whole religion thing, the reason this stands out so much is there are no miracles in this story. There are no miracles. The account of Nehemiah is it's an account about hard work and discipline and vision, which I think makes it really appropriate for this time of year for us. And so this is a really powerful account, and we're going to read this to set us up for this question we're going to ask, this disturbing question, and I'm going to read to you guys the entire chapter here. So, just a bit of backstory before we get into this. This particular account takes place right after what's commonly referred to as the Jewish exile. And the Jewish exile, just for a little history lesson, happened around 650 BC or so, when the Babylonians invaded Judah, which is the southern kingdom, which we now call modern-day Israel. So if you guys remember the story of, say, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, or Daniel, all those guys and their stories happened while the Jews were in Babylon serving under King Nebuchadnezzar. They were taken captive from their home in Judah and taken to Babylon, and they were there for 70 years, okay? For 70 years, the nation of Israel, the nation of the Jews, was nothing. It was nothing. It was shut down. The temple was shut down. It was nothing. 70 years go by, okay? This is a long time. This is longer than most of us have lived. And after 70 years in captivity in Babylon, there's another great nation that rises up. Stay with me here. There's another great nation that rises up, Persia, and they conquer the Babylonians. And so then the Jews get conquered by the Babylonians, and the Babylonians get conquered by the Persians. So now the Persians are over the Jews. And the leader of the Persians, this guy named Cyrus the Great, he sees all these people that the Babylonians had captured and taken away from their homelands, all these Jews scattered throughout the empire. And he says, okay, look, if the Babylonians took you guys from your homeland, just go back. You can all just go back, okay? We'll still be over you, but you can just go home. And so you have all these people groups that were taken captive by the Babylonians who are now allowed to begin to migrate back to their homeland of origin. And so you have tens of thousands of Jews. Eventually, hundreds of thousands of Jews are migrating back to Judah, and they're trying to reboot their nation. They're starting from scratch, trying to get the economy going, trying to get the temple going again, trying to establish Jerusalem and Judah again, but it did not go well. It did not go well because they had been gone for 70 years, right? 70 years they've been gone. Everything is wiped off the slate. Any progress they had was totally wiped out, starting fresh, and things did not go swimmingly for the Jews. Israel was stalling out. The economy was stalled out. The temple was in ruin. It was a big mess, okay? So the Persians come and they say, you can go back home, and they start migrating. 20 years into this migration process, okay? After 20 years of Jews making their way back to Judah, Israel is still this sad little dot on the map under the reign of the Persians. And it's right around here that we meet our man Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah, like I said, was a Jewish man, but what's interesting about this guy is we don't know if he ever actually had seen Judah. We don't know if he's ever seen Jerusalem or the temple or any of this stuff. He definitely wasn't 70 years old, so he was born in captivity. It's very likely he had never seen his homeland. All we know about Nehemiah is that he's a Jew and that he lives in Persia and that he works for the king of Persia, Artaxerxes, personally. That's all we know about Nehemiah, okay? And so Nehemiah begins to journal his experience during this time, and this journal of his experience is what we have in our English Bible today called the Book of Nehemiah. So when you take it for what it is, this is the account of a Jewish man some 2,500 years ago, living in Persia, working for the king of Persia, while his people are in Judah struggling to reestablish their nation. You followed so far? So here's where we're at. I'm going to read the first chapter of this account, this guy's journal of his experiences there, and I'm going to ask you this disturbing question, and we're going to spend the next 3 weeks talking about this question. Any questions? No? Okay, let's go. We'll have this up on screen so you can follow along, but this is Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, in the month of Kislev. And notice this doesn't start as a once upon a time in the mythical land of wherever. He's Nehemiah, son of this guy, in this month. This is one man's account of his experiences 2,500 years ago. He says, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, and just for those of you history buffs, Persia didn't really have capitals in this time in history, but Susa was about as close as it came to a capital. It's where the king resided, okay? And so while I'm in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah, southern part of Israel, with some other men. And I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile. Now remember, we have all these Jews migrating from Persia to Judah. And so Nehemiah is going, how are they doing? How's the rebooting process going? How are my people? How's the process of getting Judah up again going? Nehemiah has probably never been there, but these are his people, okay? That's like his homeland. This is God's promise for his people. This is his heritage. And so it's important for him. So he's asking, how's everything going? And his brother looks at him and he says, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. He says, Nehemiah, man, it's not going well. In fact, it's going terribly. He goes on and says, the wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire, which basically means we have no defense. We are a broken, battered, dying city. Jerusalem's nothing. We're surrounded by all these powerful people groups that can just march right in and take whatever they want and kill whoever they want. We're nothing. You can't even call us a nation. We're nothing. We're not a legitimate city anymore. And Nehemiah hears these things, and we get a very powerful and telling statement right after this. Nehemiah writes, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept. It says he wept. Because this wasn't just news to Jeremiah. He didn't say, oh man, that's too bad. Good luck you guys. God bless. I mean, it's not my problem because I'm here in Persia and I'm in the citadel with the king and I'm in the most wealthy, successful, powerful country in the world with access to the most wealthy, successful, powerful man in the world right over there. And so, sorry about Jerusalem, guys. See you later. That wasn't his response, because he heard what was going on with his people, with his city, with the promise of God for his people, his heritage, and it broke his heart, okay? It broke his heart, and he wept because his heart was broken over this news of how his people were doing. So he continues here. He says, for some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. And Nehemiah is actually going to record the prayer that he prayed for his people, the prayer that he prayed for his nation. He says this, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. And so Nehemiah uses this word covenant because God had many, many years before established a covenant with the nation of Israel. It's something of a conditional relationship. And here were the terms, okay? He said, here are my laws. Here are my laws. If you keep these laws, you get to live in this land and I'm going to be with you. Things are going to go well for you. But if you break my laws and you abandon me and you abandon your calling to be a light to all the other nations of the world, I'm going to take that land away from you and you're going to suffer some serious hardship. So Nehemiah is hearkening back to this covenant that God made with his people. And he says, God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love you and keep your commandments, let your ear be attentive and let your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant as praying before you day and night for your servants. And then he says something pretty interesting here. He says, I confess the sins that we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. I confess them. We have acted very wickedly towards you. And so the implication here is what? He's saying, we deserve it. He said, we deserved to be thrown out of our land. We deserved the hardship that we experienced all these years in Babylon. We broke the covenant. We broke the agreement. They deserve the struggle they're having there trying to reestablish the nation right now. We broke the covenant. We didn't obey your commands. We deserve this. We left you. And then he's going to do something kind of interesting. He's going to quote something that God said to God. He's going to quote God to God. And it's interesting. He says this, remember the instruction that you gave your servant Moses. If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. Which, okay, yeah, that happened, right? This is why Nehemiah is praying this from Susa in Persia instead of in Judah, because they were unfaithful, and he scattered them among the nations. But if you're unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. They are your servants and your people, whom you redeemed by your great strength and your mighty hand. So he's saying here, hey God, you remember way back the whole Moses thing? So the plagues in Egypt and let my people go. You pulled your people out of that. You redeemed your people from that. He's saying, you are the Redeemer. Could you redeem us again? Could you take this pitiful, little, messed up, worthless, not even being worth called a nation, tiny little group of people, and would you redeem us again? Would you be willing to bring your people back? And he says, Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this, your servant, and the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. And finally, he's going to ask for something very specific. This is where it gets good. He says, give your servant success. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. Because Nehemiah is about to do something stupid. He's about to do something a little crazy. He's about to do something serious. He's about to act on the stirring in his heart. And so here's Nehemiah, and he's, for all intents and purposes, he's kind of got it made. He's not a slave. He's not in abuse or anything. He's not oppressed. He's got a great job. He's got a great home. He's living in like the premier home of the world at that point, the citadel of Susa. He's got everything he needs. He's got everything he wants. This guy's in daily contact with the most powerful, wealthy man in the known world. And he's about to go up to that man, King Artaxerxes, and ask for a big, big favor. Now, I don't know if you guys know how this works, but you don't ask the king for favors, okay? And this is especially true in the ancient world. He's about to go up to the king of most of the known world and say, I need an indefinite leave of absence. I need to leave my job serving you. I need to go do something that I feel like I need to do. I need to go leave my incredible home, leave my plush lifestyle. I need to go to Jerusalem that is failing and dangerous and worthless and help my people rebuild their city and reestablish Jerusalem. And again, look, you don't ask the king for favors in the ancient world. The king does the asking, okay? So not only is this extremely dangerous, this is a massive risk, but not only that, let's say hypothetically if the king somehow, for some reason says, yeah, sure, you can do that. This is still a massive sacrifice for Nehemiah. He's sacrificing everything because his heart felt stirred up. But his heart was broken, and he was stirred to action by what he heard about his people. And then the chapter is going to end with this, and I love how this ends because it just stops suddenly and abruptly and dramatically. He says, I was cupbearer to the king. The end. Talk about a cliffhanger. And so here it is, okay? We finished the chapter. Here's the question of the hour. And I do not expect you to have an answer today, okay? That's okay. This is something to ruminate on, to think on over the next couple weeks. You ready? Everybody say, we're ready. We're ready. Even if you're not ready, I'm going to give it to you anyways. Here it is, okay? What breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? When you take a second and you look around you, you look at the people around you, you look at the world you're in, when you're at your job, when you're at your church, when you're commuting, when you're shopping, when you're watching TV, when you're reading the news, what breaks your heart? That thing that'll pop into your head unwillingly and disturb you. And disturb you so much that you tell yourself, like all of us do, well, I can't do anything about that. I just can't do anything about that. I don't have the resources. I don't have the money. I'm too young. I'm too old for that. I'm too busy. I'm too disconnected. I have too many responsibilities. I'm too unqualified. So God, please send somebody to take care of that problem, because I know it's a big problem and I can't even think about it for too long because I get emotional when I start thinking about it. That kind of stuff. What breaks your heart? What stirs your heart up? I tell you, that's a really dangerous question what we're asking today. And instead of going about the new year like most people do and asking, what can I do about me? What if we asked a totally and completely different question this morning? What if we asked the question, what can I do around me? And what should I do around me? Because here's what's true, and I really think this is true. If you want to be a better person this year, then do something this year that makes the world a better place. If you want to be a better person this year, then do something this year that makes the world a better place. And here's what I think is true of all of us. The people that we admire the most are not the people who manage to keep their ideal weight perpetually. That's good. That's important, okay? Some of us need to lose weight. A lot of us need to lose weight. We need to get in shape. We need to do better. We need to get more fit. We need to eat better. That's all good stuff, right? But that's not what inspires us. That's not what inspires us. It's not what inspires me or you. What inspires us is people who actually make the world around them a better place to be, or at least make someone's world a better place to be, right? Because it's hard to try to think about changing the entire world by yourself, but every single one of us has the potential to make somebody's world, or a few somebody's world, a better place. We all have that potential. And here's the thing, and this is a scary thing, but here's the thing. If we don't start thinking in these terms, what breaks my heart and what can I do about it? Here's what we're going to do in 2016. Here's exactly how 2016 is going to go for us. We do this, I do this. Here's what we'll do if we don't start thinking in these terms. We're going to sit around. We're going to watch TV. We're going to watch the news. We're going to read what's going on in the world, and we're going to blame. We're going to blame. We're going to look at something, and it's going to break our heart. And it's going to stir us up inside. And our defense mechanism is this. Somebody should be doing something about that. It's the president's fault. It's Congress's fault. It's the PTA's fault. It's the school system's fault. It's the pastor's fault. It's everybody's fault. And we're going to blame and blame and blame. We're going to spend time and energy blaming something, blaming somebody for something that breaks our heart. And here's the deal. We know this. People who blame things don't change anything. People who blame stuff don't change anything. Because blame is not a strategy for changing anything. Blame is how we avoid changing things. Blame is how you avoid changing things. But that's what we do. You boot up Facebook for just a second and read about any issue being discussed online, and you're going to see that's exactly what we do. We blame, because we see something, and it stirs us up, and it breaks our heart, and makes us sad, and we lash out defensively. Someone should be doing something about this. So just imagine for a moment, hypothetically, just imagine for just a second, what if we took the time and energy that we had planned to spend on blaming things this year and actually focused that onto trying to change the areas that stir us up, the areas around us that break our heart? And so the big question is, again, what breaks your heart? And the reason I say your, not our, or what should break your heart or whatever, is because different things are going to break different people's hearts, okay? I don't have the same burden you do. Nehemiah had a very different burden than everyone else. And here's what's cool. If you're a Christian, I actually get to be specific with you. If you're not a Christian, that's fine. The question, what breaks your heart, still very applicable, okay? I just can't get specific with you and tell you what to do. But if you are a Christian, if you're a follower of Christ, I actually can tell you what to do because Jesus Christ already told you what to do, and I just get to remind you by going back to Scripture. So Jesus said this. He made it clear that if you are a follower of His, and by that I mean somebody who, to the best of their ability, is committed to living your life according to what Jesus taught. That's a follower of Christ, okay? If you're a follower of Christ, then you must be actively involved at some level in your life and in your culture in bringing about change. Because followers of Jesus Christ always make things better. Read the New Testament, and that's something you'll notice every time. Followers of Jesus Christ make things better. They just do. You cannot be an active follower of Jesus Christ and not make somebody else's life better. You cannot be an active follower of Jesus Christ and not make the place where you work, and the place where you live, and the people around you better off. It's impossible because of the things that Jesus taught about and the way that Jesus modeled his own life. And so there's this concept that we've talked about a little bit here and there, this thing that Jesus taught, that devotion to God can be measured in devotion to other people. Devotion to God can be measured in devotion to other people. And there was this idea in Jewish culture in the day. There was this crazy idea in Jewish culture in the day that Jesus lived, that it did not matter how you treated people as long as you were okay in God's eyes. That as long as you performed the right ceremonies and you went to the right worship services, then you were okay in God's eyes, and it didn't matter how you treated anyone else because you were good. And then Jesus comes along and he says, hey, no, we're done with that idea. If you want God's attention, then you'd better pay attention to the way you're treating people around you. Because every person that you're ever going to look at in the face is made in the image of your God. And so he says, yeah, people, believe it or not, matter to God a lot. And so they better matter to you. God is very, very interested. He's very invested in how we treat the people around us. And so devotion to God can be measured in devotion to other people. If you love God, that will always translate into loving other people. Always. And so, of course, when you look at the life of Jesus Christ, when you follow his life and you see the things he did, and you look at the kind of decisions and actions he made and he took, you'll see that everywhere this guy goes, everyone around him ends up being better off. Everywhere he goes, he makes people better off. He wasn't a person that just felt compassion. Oh, man, I feel compassion. Oh, I'm stirred. And then the compassion itself is some kind of spiritual experience. He was a person who acted compassionately. There's a big difference. You're not a compassionate person just because you feel compassion. Jesus was compassionate because he acted out compassion. And the things that Jesus taught, and this was an idea of massive importance, okay? The things that he taught that people have an inherent value, not an ascribed value. This was a massive idea. In other words, he taught there's no pecking order. And in the culture of the day, pecking order was everything, okay? It was huge. Jesus said, no. It's not, I'm a Roman and you're not. It's not, I'm a slave owner and you're a slave. I'm a man and you're a woman. I have more money than you. My skin color is this, or whatever it is. That's not there, okay? That's not a real thing. And this was massive. It was massive back then because even with the Jews in the religious organization, they had this idea that if you had wealth, that meant God valued you more than someone who had less. Did you catch that? This is what the Jews believed in Jesus' day. If you had money, that meant that God valued you more than somebody who had less than you. And so the whole idea was the more money you have, the more valuable you are as a human being. So if you don't have much money, well, God clearly doesn't value you that much, and I don't have to either. And so Jesus comes along, and he conducts his life and makes his choices and teaches as if everybody were valuable to God. This revolutionary idea. There's a song, I'm sure you all remember it, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. We've been singing that since Sunday school. And this idea is a massive shift in the first century. Okay? It's a massive shift in thinking for the first century. And people watching how Jesus lived his life and the way he treated people, they were shocked when they saw him treating people that they assumed were less than him in a way as if they were valuable. And Jesus believed and acted as if every single person you come in contact with is made in the image of God and is incredibly valuable. And so therefore, to live like Jesus, to live our lives like Jesus, there's no order. There's no first class or second class or whatever. There are just people who are made in the image of God, whom Christ died for. And they're all in one giant category, and that's it. And so it's for that reason, that's why generations of Christianity, okay, throughout generations of Christianity, men and women in the name of Jesus have built hospitals, not for Christians, but for all people, because they're all valuable. And they built orphanages, not for Christian children, but for all children, because they're all valuable. They built homeless shelters, not for Christian homeless, but for all homeless, because they're all valuable. And you look back at abolition, and it was Christians like William Wilberforce who were at the center of the movement. You look back at the civil rights movement, it was Christians who were right in the middle of it. Because over and over and over and over again, it's Christians who say, wait a minute. If I'm following Jesus, I can't treat that person like they're less than me, because he sure never did. And you look at the man Jesus Christ, and he did not come to die for the sins of the Jews alone, or just the Gentiles, or just the poor, or just the rich. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. And Jesus said that everybody is valuable, inherently and incredibly valuable. And what's funny is we understand this, okay? I'm not telling you anything you don't understand. None of you are getting blown away by this massive revelation. You get this, and we think it's almost common sense, but that is because this is deeply rooted in American culture, believe it or not. This is something we're losing slowly, but this is, from the very beginning, this is ingrained in American culture, because you look at the history of the world, particularly before Jesus came and taught. And it was totally the opposite, okay? It was, I am better than you, superior than you, more valuable than you because of what I have, or where I live, or where I'm from, or who I know, or the color of my skin. And Jesus comes and flips this upside down. And at the beginning of our nation, we have our founding fathers, and they're writing the Declaration of Independence, and they were wrestling with the phraseology and the terms that they would use in this thing. And here's what they landed on. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And this is a massive idea that was introduced by Jesus Christ in a world that did not get it. And this is why when something breaks our hearts about the needs of humanity, when something breaks our hearts about human rights, or about the way a family or a child is treated, it is God stirring our hearts and saying, hey, that feeling you feel when you look at that thing right now, that's what I feel. I feel that too. So the question is, what breaks your heart? And what is the burden that God is stirring up in your heart? Because what's so interesting about Nehemiah's story is that Nehemiah's heart was broken by divine design, okay? Nehemiah didn't know this, but God had used those events to stir up his heart to get him back to Jerusalem to help rebuild that wall and reorganize his people. Because what God, he works in history towards his goals and towards his ends. And Nehemiah's role in this whole thing, in God's plan, was just, it was a part of a sequence of events that had started many, many years before him. And it would end many, many years after him. But his role was a critical one. His role was a critical one in God's plan, but he had no idea what hung in the balance of his decision to respond to his broken heart. Because 70 years before Nehemiah, God had stirred up the heart of a man named Zerubbabel to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. And about 14 years before Nehemiah, God had stirred up the heart of a man named Ezra to go back to Jerusalem and teach the people his law. And then God stirs up the heart of this man named Nehemiah, saying, go back there, reorganize your people, reestablish the city. And they're all part of this massive plan. They have no idea. And all of this is in preparation for 440 years later, when the final Jewish prophet, the priest and the king that we know as Jesus Christ, would walk through those very walls that Nehemiah built, into that very city that he helped reorganize, into that very temple they re-put back together, and proclaim who he was to the Jewish people. All the stuff you read in the New Testament, this is the setup for that to happen. And Nehemiah's decision to embrace his broken heart was part of God's plan the entire time, and he had no idea. He had absolutely no idea. And here's what some of us need to hear this morning. What hangs in the balance of our decision to embrace the burden that God has put on our hearts, we have no idea. We have no idea what hangs in the balance of that. We have no idea what hangs in the balance of our decision to embrace our broken heart, our stirred heart. And here's the thing this morning, okay? I think all this New Year stuff is good, okay? I think we should lose weight, and we should get in shape, and we should get out of debt, and we should eat better, and all this stuff. But there is more to every single one of us than a body and a bank account and a diet, okay? And those things are way too small to dedicate your life to. They're too small to dedicate your life to. So the question is, what breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? What scares you to think about? And I'll give you a disclaimer here. I'm not telling you to quit your job and become an activist. I'm not advising you to do anything irresponsible this morning. The question is, what breaks your heart? Okay? That's all I'm asking you this morning. And I'm asking you to take that question and to sit on it and to think about it and even ask yourself the question, and hypothetically, what could I do to pour into that area that breaks my heart? Because little stuff like that is how incredible things happen. And that's a real New Year's resolution right there. Because here's what we know. If you really want to become a better person this year, do something to make the world around you, or somebody's world around you, a better place. So just sit on that a week, okay? Just sit on that for a week. And if you're in a small group, I really encourage you guys to grab onto this question and discuss it for a week or two, because that is how incredible things happen. It's that little question that Nehemiah asked, hey, how are my people doing? And the response that stirred his heart up and broke his heart and changed the course of history, okay? And this is how you set yourself up to wake up a year from now and look back at the most incredible year you've ever had. And again the next year, and again the next year, and again. So as we have the band come up as we're closing here, you set yourself up to have an incredible year, not just by simply losing a few pounds, not by simply eating better than you've ever done before. You set yourself up for having an incredible year by waking up at the end of a year and knowing that your heart and your resources and your life are in sync with God's plan and burden for your life. So what breaks your heart? Let's pray. Father, thank you that you are a giver of burdens. Thank you that you care about this world and the people in it so incredibly deeply. And thank you that you pursue us so much and you stir us up to reach out. So, Father, I pray that if the answer to our question is, yeah, there is something I don't like to think about, there is something that stirs me up, Father, I pray you'd stick that in our hearts and in our minds over the next week, and you'd help us to not forget about it. You'd help us to roll that question around in our minds until we have a more solid answer, and then not let it go. And I pray you show us what it means to have the potential to change somebody's world and to begin to change the world around us in the way Jesus did. We love you, Father. Amen.